Hey guys, tonight we slip into a world of fog, filth, and forgotten hangovers, the gin-soaked streets of Georgian London. Picture this, you wake to the grey light of dawn filtering through a cracked windowpane, the air thick with coal smoke, damp wool, and the sour tang of spilled spirits. Somewhere nearby, a woman laughs, the kind of laugh that's half joy, half exhaustion, and the hollow clink of a gin bottle follows. This, you realize, is home for nearly 1 million souls who've all collectively decided that sobriety is optional. You probably wouldn't survive a week here, not because of disease or crime, but because you drown in juniper before you got your bearings, so, before you get comfortable. Take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know where you're listening from, and what time it is there, because tonight, we're time traveling straight into a hangover that lasted half a century. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge down a cobbled alley, boots slick with mud and worse. The city wakes like an unwashed giant, coughing, swearing, creaking to life. It's the early 1700s, and London is bursting at the seams, teeming with laborers, soldiers, widows, and rural migrants chasing dreams that turn to gin-fueled illusions by noon. A cup of water isn't safe to drink, the Thames itself is practically a moving sewer. But gin? That's clean enough, and conveniently numbs the smell of everything else. The stuff is everywhere. Street vendors balance trays of cloudy liquor, taverns open at dawn, and even children can fetch a halfpenny's worth if they're tall enough to reach the counter. One contemporary observer claimed that in some parishes, 1 in 4 houses sold gin. Historians still argue whether that figure was exaggerated for moral panic or depressingly accurate. Either way, you can feel the intoxication in the air, not just chemical, but cultural. You pass a wooden cart heaped with juniper berries from Holland, destined for yet another clandestine distiller. Britain's recent wars have left the economy unsteady, and imported French brandy, the old favorite, has become both scarce and suspiciously unpatriotic. The government, in its infinite wisdom, decides to encourage homegrown spirits instead. Cheap grain, easy distillation, minimal oversight, what could go wrong? Within years, gin becomes the everyman's drink, the opiate of an empire not yet sure how to handle urban poverty. You watch as a ragged man ladles gin from a barrel labeled the King's Comfort. He's set up near Street Giles, a district already famous for vice. His customers line up patiently, eyes dull, coins trembling in their hands. A woman in a torn shawl offers him her child's wooden toy as payment. He nods, fair trade. The gin he pours her burns on the way down, full of impurities that would make modern chemists cry. But it brings warmth, and warmth is a luxury here. The noise rises, carts rumble, hawkers yell, church bells toll somewhere behind the fog. You notice that people laugh easily, almost defiantly, as though mocking the misery pressing in on them. That's the strange paradox of Georgian London, a society both collapsing and flourishing, where art and architecture bloom while half the population is semi-conscious. Somewhere above the chaos, great thinkers like Isaac Newton and Alexander Pope are writing about reason and virtue. Down here, though, reason has been pickled, a preacher shouts at the corner, waving a pamphlet titled The Sin of Strong Liquors. His breath smells faintly of the same stuff he condemns. You can't help but smirk, hypocrisy is one of the city's cheaper exports. He points toward a nearby tavern door painted with the image of a smiling cherub holding a bottle, and cries, "Mother's ruin." The crowd laughs and goes in anyway. You turn into another street, narrower still, where shouts echo between leaning buildings. Laundry sags above your head like surrender flags. You notice a mural scratched into plaster, a crude face with X's for eyes, a jug beneath it. Probably a local joke. It feels almost alive, watching the people who stagger past. As the morning wears on, the line between work and leisure blurs. Bricklayers pause for a sip, washerwomen sneak swigs between chores, and even apprentices are known to down gin before lessons. It's cheap, potent, and available. Some say it's the only way to make life bearable in a city where hope feels rationed. Others, particularly the wealthy, insist the poor drink because they're lazy. Missing the irony that the gin industry itself is built on their desperation, a man in a powdered wig bumps into you, curses under his breath, and drops a pamphlet, a modest defense of the distillers. It argues, quite seriously, that gin keeps the working classes content and obedient. You tuck it away, a souvenir of moral gymnastics that will repeat across centuries. A horse passes, dragging a cask toward a gin palace soon to open its doors. You catch the reflection of pale sunlight glinting off puddles, tiny mirrors showing a world that looks cleaner than it is. For a brief moment, the city almost feels beautiful, shimmering through the haze. Then someone vomits nearby, and the spell breaks. As night approaches, the taverns glow like lanterns in a storm. You duck into one for warmth, greeted by laughter, music, and the smell of sawdust soaked in spirits. You take a seat, and it hits you how fast the gin has seeped into every brick, every breath. This isn't just a city of drinkers, it's a city that runs on intoxication, a metropolis both electrified and anesthetized. Outside, the moon rises over rooftops black with soot, and the Thames glimmers faintly in the distance. Tomorrow will be the same, dawn to dusk, gin to gin, hope diluted and bottled for another day. You wake again to the muffled sound of tankards clinking and a baby crying somewhere down the street. It's barely dawn, but already, the day's first gin is flowing. You rub your eyes, trying to shake off the sour scent of juniper and yeast that lingers in the fog. Welcome to the land of mother's ruin, where breakfast, quite literally, begins with a shot. The distilleries hum quietly, almost like background music for misery. You wander past one, just a rickety shack with smoke puffing through holes in the roof, and peek inside. A man in a grimy apron stirs a bubbling pot, humming to himself as though he's cooking soup. But the soup is a crude mash of barley, sawdust, and turpentine. He ladles out a sample, tastes it, nods approvingly, and coughs violently for a full 10 seconds before muttering, "Perfect." You have to admire the confidence, everyone drinks it. Laborers, maids, even old men missing half their teeth. Gin has become a breakfast staple, sold in cups as small as thimbles and as large as pails. In a world where clean water is rarer than good fortune, gin feels like liquid salvation, at least until you realize salvation burns on the way down and numbs more than your throat. You pass a fishmonger whose stall reeks of salt and smoke. He's already 2 gulps deep, swaying slightly as he slices cod. His wife, hair tied back with a rag, pours herself some from a clay bottle shaped like a pear. Keeps out the chill, she mutters, though it's more habit than excuse. Across the lane, a nursemaid dips her finger in a tiny cup and lets a baby suckle the residue, a trick to stop the crying, or maybe to make the world a little easier to bear. Historians still argue whether this image of drunken mothers handing gin to infants was a moral exaggeration or a bleak truth. But even if it's half true, it tells you everything about Georgian life: survival first, ethics later. You wander through Covent Garden, past flower sellers and coachmen who shout over the clatter of hooves. A boy no older than 12 winks at you, lifts his coat, and reveals a dozen miniature gin bottles sewn into the lining. "Penny apiece," he whispers. You can't tell if he's a budding entrepreneur or a victim of entrepreneurial parenting. Either way, he'll be drunk by lunchtime. A nearby sign creaks in the wind, "Drunk for a penny, dead drunk for 2." It's not a joke, it's a business model. You step inside the dim room beneath it, where the floor is sticky and the air thick as porridge. Dozens of figures lie slumped on straw mats. Some snore. Others stare vacantly at the ceiling beams. Lips moving in slow prayer or delirium. The keeper of the place, a plump woman with a weary smile, ladles gin from a barrel into mugs. Best in town, she assures you. You believe her, not because it's true, but because she says it like a promise she's had to repeat 1,000 times. In one corner, a group of dockworkers pass a jug around, singing a mangled sea shanty about Juniper Jack, a fictional sailor who drank himself into legend. Between verses, they laugh, slap backs, and take another swig. You can't help but feel the warmth in their camaraderie, as if gin, for all its ruin, at least gives people something to share, but outside, the city stumbles under the weight of it all. Crime rises, disease spreads, and productivity plunges. Employers complain that their workers are too drunk to function. Doctors warn that gin is rotting people from the inside. The clergy declares it Satan's favorite beverage. And yet, every warning seems to have the opposite effect. The more they condemn it, the more people drink. Nothing tastes quite like rebellion served in a pewter cup. You find yourself watching a young woman with hollow cheeks and eyes too old for her face. She's selling gin by the ladle near a market gate, her sign crudely painted, "Drink for the weary." She explains that she once worked as a maid in Mayfair but lost her position after being caught with the bottle. Now, she earns more selling the stuff than she ever did scrubbing floors. There's no bitterness in her voice, just a kind of resigned humor. They call it mother's ruin, she says, but it's the only thing that keeps us standing. A coach rattles past, splashing the gutter water, which, if you're honest, is at least 30% gin. Inside the coach, two gentlemen in powdered wigs discuss politics, oblivious to the slum that slides by their window. One mutters something about public morals while sipping discreetly from a silver flask. The hypocrisy is enough to make you laugh. Or drink. Further on, you pass a print shop selling cheap pamphlets titled The Evils of Gin, their moral outrage printed beside woodcuts of drunken women collapsing in alleys. They sell like hotcakes, especially among people who'll be drunk within the hour. You buy one for a farthing. It declares that women drink, neglect their offspring, and die unrepentant. You look up from the page and see two mothers pushing prams while sharing a flask, laughing at some private joke. Maybe the pamphlet writers should have joined them, might have improved their mood. You pause by the river. The water glistens in the morning light, dark and sluggish. Somewhere downstream, a distillery dumps its waste straight into the current. The air smells faintly of yeast, smoke, and despair. And yet, there's beauty here. The sound of bells ringing from St. Paul's. The chatter of market stalls. The resilience of people who somehow keep moving forward. You sip from a cup offered by a friendly stranger, harsh, medicinal, but strangely comforting. It warms your throat, your stomach, your chest. For a moment, you almost understand why the city drinks itself into oblivion. When the world feels too heavy, a little burn can feel like mercy. The morning light sharpens, slicing through the fog like a slow-moving blade, and you find yourself standing at the heart of Georgian London's nightmare, Gin Alley. It's the kind of place that makes you instinctively check your pockets and your conscience. The air here feels heavier, sticky with sweat and smoke, and every wall, every window frame, seems to lean under the weight of despair. The street teems with movement, children darting barefoot through puddles, old women clutching clay bottles, soldiers pawning their coats for one more sip. This is the world immortalized by William Hogarth's infamous 1751 engraving, Gin Lane, and as you take it all in, you realize it's not exaggeration. It's reportage with artistic flair. The engraving shows mothers neglecting babies, men collapsing in gutters, and even a skeletal figure gnawing on a bone while a distiller's shop looms behind. You glance around and, well, there they are, alive and staggering. The print may have been etched in ink, but the scene breathes right here in front of you. You step carefully over a man sprawled face down in the mud, his hand still gripping an empty gin cup. A dog tugs at his sleeve, either loyal or hungry, it's hard to tell which. Nearby, a young woman sits on the steps of a broken doorway, her hair tangled, her baby silent in her lap. You don't need to look closely to know the child isn't asleep. Her eyes are unfocused, her mouth still half open in a song she's forgotten. That's when it hits you, this isn't just about drinking. It's about desperation distilled, liquid hopelessness sold by the pint, you turn and find a small shopfront boasting the sign "The Spirit of Paradise." The irony could win awards. Inside, a makeshift bar, a plank of wood across 2 barrels, hosts an audience of 6 bleary souls. The barkeep pours gin from a jug with no label, no measure, no mercy. The stuff smells sharp enough to peel paint. You decline politely, though he eyes you like you're the crazy one. "Only a halfpenny," he grunts. "Cheaper than bread." That, right there, is the problem. Gin has become cheaper than food, cheaper than sanity. Grain that could have filled bellies instead fills bottles. Historians still argue whether famine and the gin craze fueled each other or merely shared a miserable coincidence, but either way, the result is written on every face in this alley. The preacher's voice echoes faintly from a nearby corner, quoting proverbs about drunkenness. You follow the sound, expecting a sermon. Instead, you find a man slumped beside a cart, reciting verses between hiccups. His Bible doubles as a coaster for his cup. "The wages of sin," he mumbles, "are negotiable." You can't help but chuckle. It's either that or cry. Across the lane, a group of boys chases a rat, cheering as it darts beneath a collapsed doorway. They're laughing, wild with energy, until one of them stumbles, falls, and bursts into tears. His friend, barely older, hands him a sip of gin to make it better. You can feel your stomach twist. Childhood here doesn't last long, it dissolves in juniper fumes before you can even name it. Still, amid the misery, life goes on in stubborn defiance. A street fiddler plays a jaunty tune beside a gin shop, his bow scraping like laughter against the city's exhaustion. A woman hums along while sweeping her threshold with surprising care, as if daring the grime to win. You realize that even in the bleakest corners, people cling to rhythm, routine, and the smallest fragments of joy. The stench deepens as you pass an alley where distillers dump their dregs, murky, oily residue that steams slightly in the chill air. A pig roots through it contentedly. The locals joke that the pigs here are half pickled before they're cured. You'd laugh too if the smell didn't sting your eyes. You stop before a tattered poster nailed to a post: "Drunkenness is the mother of poverty." Someone has scrawled beneath it, "And poverty is the father of drunkenness." You have to admit, it's hard to argue with that logic. Above you, laundry flaps between windows like surrender flags. A voice calls out, "Gin, fresh from the still." And a woman lowers a bucket by rope to fetch her ration. It's urban efficiency at its finest. No need to leave the house when the hangover delivery system comes to you. Somewhere behind you, a fight breaks out. 2 men tumble into the mud, fists flying, laughter turning to rage. You step aside as one of them brandishes a broken bottle. The crowd barely notices. Violence has become background noise, a rhythm of its own. It's almost strange how quickly they go back to drinking afterward. Like punctuation marks in a sentence that never ends, you wander on until the street widens near a row of crooked taverns. Someone's painted a crude copy of Hogarth's Gin Lane on the wall, complete with drunken mothers and collapsing roofs. Except here, the faces are real, and one of them even waves at you. The line between art and life has dissolved entirely. Just like reason in the bottom of a gin cup, historians still argue whether Hogarth's engravings truly changed public opinion or merely reflected it. Some say his moralizing shocked London into sobriety, others claim it just gave people a new thing to laugh about between drinks. You suspect the truth lies somewhere in the middle. Like most things in history, as dusk settles, the alley grows louder. Fires flicker in tin lamps, shadows dance on cracked walls, and the smell of cheap gin mingles with roasted chestnuts from a nearby cart. For a brief moment, the chaos almost feels festive. You close your eyes, and the sounds blur together into a strange lullaby, the murmur of the doomed, humming themselves to sleep. When you open them again, the woman with the lifeless child is gone. So is the preacher, the fiddler, the laughing boys. Only the fog remains, rolling in like a curtain over the final act of a tragedy no one remembers writing, and yet, somewhere in that haze, you can still hear faint laughter, a stubborn heartbeat pulsing through the city's veins. It's ugly, it's raw, it's human. And as you walk away from Gin Alley, you realize London isn't dying, it's just drunk. You wake to the echo of bells clanging through the smoky London dawn, though they don't call for prayer, they toll for moral panic. Newspapers, pamphlets, and preachers have declared open war on gin. The respectable drunkards of the night before have transformed, by daylight, into crusaders of virtue. The hypocrisy smells as sharp as juniper. You walk through Fleet Street as printers pull fresh sheets from their presses, each one shrieking about the great British degeneracy. Headlines cry gin, the devil's own brew. And London falls into liquid sin. One pamphlet bears a woodcut of a skeletal woman offering a gin bottle to a crying infant. Beneath it, a caption reads, "Drink and perish." The irony is that the printer's apprentice, delivering stacks to the bookseller, smells distinctly of gin himself. The pulpits are no quieter. You slip into St. Giles Church, where the Reverend Whitfield bellows from the altar. Brothers and sisters, the streets overflow with ruin. Mothers drown babes in gin instead of milk. Men rot before their time. London is no longer a city. It is a distillery of damnation. The congregation nods solemnly, some wiping tears. You notice one woman weeping into a handkerchief embroidered with tiny bottles. Outside, the sermon continues in every form imaginable. Cartoonists draw scenes of apocalyptic debauchery, balladeers sing moral verses on street corners. Gin, gin, you wicked sin, one sings, you take the coin and rot the skin. Passers-by drop pennies in his cap and buy gin afterward. The message doesn't quite stick. Politicians seize their chance. In Parliament, debates rage about how to restore virtue to the English body. One MP thunders that the gin shops are factories of moral deformity. Another counters that gin taxes will only hurt the poor further. The first replies, then perhaps sobriety will teach them thrift. You can almost hear the self-satisfaction clinking in his voice. A new phrase circulates through the drawing rooms, the gin craze. It sounds almost fashionable. Moral reform becomes entertainment, and everyone's got an opinion. In taverns, satirical plays are performed about drunken mothers and blind distillers. They make the audience laugh nervously before they order another round. You wander down to St. Giles in the Fields, ground zero of this social hysteria. Preachers shout from soapboxes, constables drag away street sellers. Gin bottles shatter underfoot like brittle dreams. The city's trying to purge itself, but it's not easy when every alley smells of spirit. On one corner, a group of reformers hands out tracts titled "The Death of Mother's Ruin." Their leader, Mrs. Sarah Green, looks you dead in the eye. "We'll end this plague," she says firmly. Gin is not a drink, it's a death sentence. You notice the exhaustion in her eyes, the kind that only comes from fighting an endless tide, but not everyone agrees. A man nearby, clearly tipsy, yells back, "Better to die drunk than live sober under your sermons." The crowd jeers. And a constable hauls him off. The reformers cheer, though it feels hollow. Pamphlets multiply faster than rats. Some warn that gin destroys families, others insist it's a papist conspiracy to weaken Protestant England. The absurdity builds upon itself like foam on an overboiled still. And through it all, the distillers keep producing, the drinkers keep drinking, and the reformers keep shouting. In Covent Garden, a printer named Henry Fielding, the same Fielding who'll one day write Tom Jones, sits in his office drafting a new kind of story. He's seen enough debauchery for a lifetime and intends to expose it in both satire and statute. If the pen can't stop them, he tells his assistant, perhaps the law will. He'll soon become a magistrate and a fierce opponent of gin, founding London's first professional police force. But for now, he's just another man trying to turn chaos into prose. the press amplifies the hysteria until it becomes self-sustaining. People start seeing gin in every tragedy, every stillbirth, every robbery, every broken marriage. A sailor drowns in the Thames. Gin did it. A warehouse burns down, gin again. It becomes the scapegoat for everything wrong with the age, and yet, as you stroll through the night markets, you can still hear the corks popping. Behind shuttered stalls, women pour gin into teacups, men hide bottles beneath flour sacks. The reformers can't stamp it out because they're fighting not just addiction but despair. Gin has become the only comfort some people can afford. You duck into a print shop to escape the cold. A boy no older than 12 is setting type for a broadside titled A Cry Against the Gin Fiend. His hands tremble from the cold, or maybe from something else. He notices your glance and shrugs. Mom drinks it. Dad sells it. I print the warnings. Guess we all do our part. His grin is crooked but not unkind, even the art world joins the crusade. You find Hogarth's Gin Lane displayed in a shop window, his famous engraving of chaos incarnate. A skeletal mother drops her baby over a stairwell, a man gnaws on a bone, and the streets overflow with corpses and gin bottles. People gather to gawk, tsk, and murmur, disgraceful. Then they head to the nearest tavern to wash down their outrage. By now, Parliament's outrage has turned into legislation. The Gin Act of 1736 imposes harsh taxes and licensing fees. Every gin seller must pay £50 a year, a sum impossible for most. But enforcement proves nearly impossible. Riots break out. Constables are bribed, informers beaten, and fake medicinal labels printed by the thousands. You meet one distiller who's rebranded his product as Dr. Fizzle's Nerve Tonic. He winks and says, "Same gin, new name." People feel better already. You can't help but laugh, even as you feel the futility of it all. The moral panic swells and breaks like the Thames in flood. Preachers scream, artists warn, politicians legislate, but the people keep drinking. The frenzy burns hot, then cools, then flares again. Like gin itself, outrage becomes addictive. By the end of the decade, London is weary of its own hysteria. The reformers have made their point, the distillers have adapted, and the poor are still poor. You realize moral panics are just another kind of intoxication, self-righteous and fleeting. The night settles again over the city, soft and gray. Somewhere, a bottle clinks against stone. A child laughs, a preacher sighs, a printer wipes ink from his hands. London exhales, briefly sober, already dreaming of its next delirium. You wake to the clink of glass and the hiss of gaslight and realize you're no longer in the shabby gin dens of the slums. The city has changed, slicked its hair back, buttoned its waistcoat, and learned how to sip instead of swill. This is the rise of the gin palaces, temples of intoxication that make sin look elegant. You step through the doors of one near Holborn, and the first thing that hits you is light, so much light. Rows of brilliant chandeliers hang like constellations, their reflections dancing across mirrored walls. The floors shine with oil-scrubbed wood, and the bar stretches like an altar of brass and cut glass. Behind it, bottles glow amber and emerald in the lamplight, labeled with names so proud they sound aristocratic: Old Tom, Empress, Blue Ruin No. 5. The air hums with chatter, laughter, and the gentle rattle of coins. There's perfume, tobacco, and the faintest tang of juniper that never really leaves London's lungs. You lean on the counter beside a woman in satin gloves who holds her glass like it's a prop in a play. She glances at you, smirks, and says, "You know, dear, the worse the morals, the better the decor." She's not wrong. These places are the new face of the old addiction. What began in dirty alleys has been reborn as luxury. The poor still drink the rough stuff, but now the middle classes can indulge without shame. A respectable clerk can stop here after work and tell himself it's just sociability. The gin may be smoother, but the hunger behind it hasn't changed. historians still argue whether these glittering establishments truly reformed London's drinking habits or simply disguised them with polish. On one hand, there's less crime and fewer deaths. On the other, there's more debt, more late nights, and more quiet ruin behind velvet curtains. You can't help but think that humanity has simply upgraded its vices. The bartender polishes a glass and tells you business is booming. "It's the gas lamps, see?" he says proudly. Makes everyone look rich and handsome. People drink twice as much when they like their reflection. You watch as a group of young men in bowler hats toast their own faces in the mirror, laughing as if the world belongs to them. Behind the bar, gin is mixed now, no longer just swallowed neat. Lemon peel, sugar, bitters. Someone whispers the word cocktail, still new and foreign sounding. You taste one, cool, sharp, alive. It doesn't burn like the old stuff, it glides. Civilization, it seems, has reached the juniper berry. In a quiet corner, a painter sketches the scene. He's studying the way light hits the glassware. Later, he'll sell it as social commentary, though for now he's on his third drink and can't feel his hand. Across from him, a journalist scribbles notes for an exposé titled The Shining Curse of the Gin Palaces. You suspect he'll publish it right after ordering another round. You stroll toward the back room, where velvet curtains muffle laughter. Hear the city's elite whisper business over brandy, or gin masquerading as brandy. A stockbroker brags about a new railway line, while his companion, a poet, insists gin inspires his verse. "Juniper for the muse," he says, raising his glass. You think of how much inspiration is just self-medication in prettier packaging. Outside, though, the slums haven't vanished. You can see them reflected faintly in the palace windows, shadowy reminders of what's beneath the surface. The poor still crowd the streets, still drink what they can afford, still vanish quietly when their hearts or livers give out. But in here, surrounded by glass and gold, it's easy to pretend you're safe from ruin. A waiter passes carrying a tray of oysters and gin cocktails. You can't help but laugh softly. Once, gin was the drink of beggars. Now it's paired with seafood and social climbing. You overhear one gentleman boast, "It's the drink of progress, old boy." You wonder if progress is just decadence with better marketing, everywhere. The city glows brighter, louder, more artificial. Gaslight stretches deep into the night, extending London's waking hours and its drinking hours too. People pour into the streets long after midnight, flushed with laughter and gin courage. A group of women in feathered hats sing off-key, and a constable nearby hums along instead of stopping them. The city has made peace with its poison, and yet, there's still an unease beneath it all. Newspapers occasionally print nervous editorials about the glittering decay of moral fiber. Clergymen sermonize about how even the upper classes now sip the serpent's cup. But nobody listens for long. The chandeliers drown them out. You find yourself walking home along the Strand, the streets shimmering in the haze of gaslight. A drunk coachman whistles, a cat darts across your path, and the air smells faintly of sugar, smoke, and something metallic. Progress, maybe. You glance back at the Gin Palace. Through the frosted glass, you see silhouettes dancing, glasses raised in eternal mid-toast. You think of the old days, the alley stills, the drunk for a penny rooms, and realize London hasn't changed so much as learned how to hide its vices in plain sight. The same spirit flows through different bottles. Through different people. Only the shine has changed, and as the bells of St. Martin's toll midnight, you can't help but smile at the thought, gin, once the ruin of the poor, now the delight of the polite. The city drinks, always has, always will. Only the glassware evolves. You wake to the sound of clinking coins and cheerful shouting, markets opening, horses snorting, and carts rattling along the cobblestones. The city feels wealthier now, self-assured. The worst of the gin madness seems behind it, or at least neatly tucked beneath the lace cuffs of respectability. You stretch, step into the morning fog, and realize that London has become a creature of habit, sober in daylight, tipsy by dusk, but the hangover from the gin craze lingers, like a faint tremor beneath the city's calm exterior. The government, tired of chasing shadows, finally settles into a compromise: regulation, not prohibition. Taxes still exist, but so do licensed distillers. The difference now is scale and polish. No more bathtub brews or poisonous concoctions, now it's copper stills, glass bottles, and brand names. Gin has gone corporate. You wander past a new distillery, its brick facade clean and proud, with smoke curling from tall chimneys. Inside, workers in tidy uniforms haul sacks of grain. It's loud but orderly. A foreman with a clipboard gives you a nod and says, "We've civilized it, see? No more ruin, no more riots. Just business." You're not sure whether to applaud or sigh. Gin's rebirth as a legitimate industry transforms the city's rhythm. The upper classes embrace it again, though now they mix it with tonic, citrus, or a dash of vermouth. A doctor at the bar calls it good for digestion. Historians still argue whether he truly believed that or was simply too polite to admit he liked the taste. The gin and tonic, born from empire and quinine, becomes the drink of soldiers and gentlemen alike. Somewhere in India, a British officer grimaces at the bitterness of his daily malaria medicine and adds gin to make it bearable. The idea travels back home and sticks. London, ever adaptable, turns another necessity into fashion. Meanwhile, advertisements bloom like ivy across brick walls and newspapers. Be sociable, drink Gordon's. One poster declares. Another shows a smiling woman in a bonnet raising a glass of clean, honest spirit. You chuckle softly at that word, honest. The city's marketers are cleverer than its moralists ever were. You pass a pub where a brass sign boasts licensed purveyor of fine gin. Inside, it's a different world than the slums of old. Marble counters, pressed uniforms. Laughter that sounds well fed. The bartender lines up clear glasses like soldiers on parade, filling each with crisp, measured precision. There's no desperation here, only routine. The patrons drink quietly, talking about stocks, railways, and the colonies. You listen as one man reminisces about his father's tales of the bad old days, of women selling gin by the ladle and men sleeping in gutters. His tone is both horrified and wistful, as if he almost envies the wildness of it all. It had character, he says. Now it's just business. His friend nods solemnly, then asks for another round. Outside, the streets themselves seem cleaner. Children run barefoot through puddles that no longer smell of alcohol. The police, now organized and uniformed, patrol calmly rather than chasing gin runners through alleys. London has grown up, or at least learned to fake maturity. Still, the poor haven't disappeared, only moved further out. In the newer suburbs, cheap gin still trickles through the cracks. There's always someone selling knockoffs, always someone willing to risk blindness for a few pennies saved. Progress doesn't reach every doorstep. In the East End, you find a small gin shop run by a woman named Agnes. She's plump, cheerful, and honest about her trade. It's not like the old poison. She insists, handing you a sample. Proper distilled, clean as a whistle. My customers live long enough to come back next week. She laughs, and you find yourself laughing too. Maybe this is what moderation looks like, hope diluted but not destroyed. A scholar once wrote that the Georgian gin craze was less about drink and more about despair, a symptom of poverty, overcrowding, and hopelessness. Standing here, surrounded by glass, brass, and order, you realize that he might have been right. People don't drink because they're wicked, they drink because they're human, and life, then as now, can be unbearably heavy. You walk along the Thames at twilight, where the river glimmers gold under the setting sun. Once, this water carried the waste of illegal stills, now it reflects the glow of factory windows. The air smells cleaner, but the ghosts remain. Somewhere in the city's underbelly, echoes of drunk for a penny still whisper through the brickwork. The pubs begin to fill again as darkness settles. You pause at a window where a group of young women in modest dresses sit laughing over gin cocktails. They're secretaries, typists, teachers, women with wages and choices their grandmothers never had. "It's fashionable now," one says between giggles. "A lady's drink." The others raise their glasses in agreement. You wonder what the moralists of 1736 would think of that. Inside, the bartender tells you he's seen gin through 3 generations of reinvention. "First it ruined us," he says, drying a glass. "Then it refined us. Now it just reminds us who we are." You sip your drink, smooth, cold, perfectly balanced, and feel the city's heartbeat in it. London hums with quiet pride, unaware that the same cycle of indulgence and reform will return in new forms: coffee, opium, cocaine, whatever censure you choose. But tonight, it rests in a brief illusion of control, believing it has tamed the juniper spirit that once ruled its streets. You leave the pub as the lamps flicker to life. Somewhere, a violinist plays a tune that could be old or new, it doesn't matter. The melody drifts through the fog like a sigh. You follow it down the cobbled lane, feeling both the weight of history and the lightness of gin warming your chest. The years slide by, quiet as a sigh through the London fog. The Industrial Revolution surges forward, its engines hissing like beasts, and the city grows taller, louder, greedier. Gin is no longer a scandal, it's a staple. Factories churn it out in sparkling glass bottles, and it sits neatly on polished shelves beside brandy and rum. The middle classes sip it with decorum, the working classes nurse it for comfort, and the upper classes, well, they've claimed it as one of their own now. You find yourself walking through a world of advertisements and affluence. Billboards tower over the city's rooftops, promising refinement in every drop. Trains roar past carrying crates of gin to far-off towns. Even the Queen's soldiers drink gin and tonic in the colonies, a bittersweet taste of home against the sweltering heat of foreign lands. In London, gin has found its second act, sleek, respectable, and thoroughly British. Distilleries like Gordon's, Tanqueray, and Booth's expand their empires. Their names are printed in elegant fonts on every pub window, each brand claiming purity, quality, tradition. The juniper spirit, once the curse of the poor, now carries the scent of empire, yet you can't help but notice that beneath this new layer of sophistication, the old hunger still simmers. The poor haven't vanished, they've just been hidden better. In backstreets and tenements, cheap knockoffs persist, rough spirits distilled in secrecy. They call it Blue Ruin still, the name lingering like a bruise. It's what people drink when the factory gates close and the week's wages run short. You meet a man named Arthur, a dockworker with hands rough as rope. He invites you into a small tavern near the river. One of the few places where the gin still bites like it did a century ago. "It's different now," he says, raising his glass. "Cleaner, aye. But it still does the same job." You ask what he means. He grins wearily. Makes the noise stop. Around you, the pub feels timeless. There's laughter, shouting, and the same half-drunk optimism that kept London spinning through plagues, wars, and taxes. Above the bar hangs a dusty print of Hogarth's Gin Lane. Someone has drawn a smile on the baby tumbling from its mother's arms. You wonder if it's mockery or irony, or both. Later that night, as you walk home, you notice the faint reflection of the gaslights in the puddles, little golden halos dancing with your steps. The city hums like a giant machine. Somewhere, a factory whistle blows, and you think of how gin, like steam and coal, has become part of London's rhythm, fuel for endurance. Time keeps moving. Decades fold over each other like pages in a damp book. The 19th century matures into the 20th, trains give way to trams, and trams to automobiles. The empire creaks but holds, at least for a while. Through it all, gin remains, a constant companion, evolving with the fashions. By the 1920s, it's the jazz age. You walk into a London bar that feels like a heartbeat turned inside out, bright lights, cigarette smoke, laughter that tastes of rebellion. The Great War has ended, and people are desperate to feel alive again. Women wear short dresses and bobbed hair, and men in tuxedos mix martinis with a precision that borders on ritual. 2 ounces gin, 1 ounce vermouth, a bartender recites like scripture. He stirs, not shakes, and slides the glass toward a woman with crimson lips. The drink of civilization, he says with a wink, the irony isn't lost on you. Gin, once blamed for destroying civilization, now serves as its symbol of sophistication. The world is strange that way. Every vice reborn as virtue in the right glass. You sip a martini, crisp and cold. The flavor is restrained, civilized, balanced between juniper and melancholy. You can taste the centuries in it, the chaos of Gin Lane, the polished confidence of the Victorian parlors, the thrill of the 1920s dance floors. Gin has survived everything: taxes, bans, wars, and moral crusades. It adapts. Like the city it came from. Outside, the world begins to tremble again. The Great Depression creeps in from across the Atlantic. London tightens its belt. The bars grow quieter, the glamour fades. But gin remains, as always, faithful to its purpose. In times of celebration, it sparkles; in times of sorrow, it comforts. The same spirit that fueled riots now fills the silence after layoffs. You sit in a dim pub, watching men in worn coats share a single bottle, their voices soft. "It's not the drink that ruins us," one mutters. "It's the world." You nod without speaking. History keeps circling back to that truth, and then, war again. 1939, bombs fall on London. The sky burns. You stand in the glow of an air raid, the air thick with dust and courage. In a shelter, someone passes a bottle. "For luck," they say, though you both know it's for fear. The gin burns in your throat, sharp and familiar. It tastes like resilience. When the war ends, London is scarred but standing. Streets rebuilt, spirits lifted. Gin too reclaims its place, now less as escape and more as memory. Distilleries reopen, advertisements return, and people drink to remember that they survived. You find yourself back at the Thames, older now, or perhaps it's just the city that's aged. The river still glints beneath the bridge, the same way it did in Hogarth's time, in Victoria's, in yours. You imagine all the lives that have passed by it, cups in hand, hearts heavy or light, chasing that same elusive warmth. History, you realize, isn't written in ink or stone. It's distilled, bottled, and sipped quietly in the corner of a pub. You wake to a city that has learned to live with gin as if it were part of the architecture. Pubs are fewer now, polished and regulated, but Londoners still flock to them like bees to a honeycomb. Gin, in its many incarnations, flows steadily through society, sometimes medicinal, sometimes fashionable, sometimes quiet comfort at the end of a long day. You walk past a corner where a small shop advertises Old Tom Gin, vintage 1935. The letters are faded, the glass dusty. Inside, a man pours a measure for a customer, and the liquid catches the light like molten gold. "It's history in a bottle," he says. You nod, thinking about the centuries of chaos, reform, and reinvention behind that simple pour. Historians still argue whether the enduring popularity of gin is due to taste, culture, or the human need for solace. Standing here, you understand it's all three. It's the taste of resilience, the culture of ritual, and the comfort of a familiar burn on the throat. Gin has grown up with London, reflecting its contradictions, elegance and squalor, freedom and restraint, hope and despair. You step into a small backroom pub, nearly invisible from the street. It smells faintly of timber, polished metal, and a lingering tang of juniper. The clientele is diverse: clerks, artists, retired sailors, young couples. Everyone drinks quietly, letting the alcohol soften the edges of their day. Conversation is subdued, laughter gentle. This is the private side of gin, the side the moralists never see. In one corner, a poet scribbles lines on a napkin, occasionally sipping from a small glass. Gin, he murmurs, teaches patience. Teaches perspective. A woman at the bar smiles. Or tolerance, she replies. The poet laughs. They are both right, and you realize that gin, more than any law or sermon, has taught Londoners how to endure. Outside, the streets hum with the rhythm of modern life. Trams clatter past, taxis honk, and the Thames glitters under streetlights. Gin flows unseen through apartments and parlors, sometimes in cocktails, sometimes in a simple neat measure. It has integrated itself into daily life, a silent companion in both joy and sorrow. You notice a small museum plaque detailing the gin craze of the 18th century. It warns of mothers' ruin, of riots, of moral panic. You smile softly, thinking of the alleys, the stills, the gin palaces, and the soldiers of the empire. Every era has its vice, every city its necessity. Gin, in its enduring form, tells the story of London itself, resilient, inventive, flawed, and always spirited. A young couple enters the pub, laughing over a shared cocktail. The woman's gloves are soft and new, the man's jacket polished. They clink glasses. To surviving, she says. And thriving, he adds. You watch them, noting the continuity, different faces, different times, same human need for warmth, courage, and connection. Gin has survived centuries by meeting that need, bending, evolving, and never disappearing entirely. The bartender offers you a final pour, neat and calm. You accept. The warmth spreads slowly, grounding you in the here and now while echoing the past. You think of the beggars, the magistrates, the poets, the housewives, the reformers. They all shared this one liquid thread through time. As you leave the pub, the fog rolls in, soft and enveloping. The city exhales, and you walk through it quietly, footsteps muffled by mist. Somewhere above, a clock tolls midnight, marking hours that will never return. You sip from your glass once more, tasting history, human folly, and the strange, enduring comfort of gin. London continues to hum around you, alive with stories, secrets, and spirits. Gin is no longer chaos. It's ritual, memory, and a bridge across centuries, a simple drink that has borne witness to the evolution of a city, the endurance of its people, and the subtle magic of human resilience. You wake to a London that is quieter now, though the hum of industry never truly fades. World War II has passed, and the city bears its scars with quiet dignity. Gin, once the drink of desperate alleyways and glittering palaces, now pervades homes, offices, and quiet evening gatherings. The spirit has settled into its role as a companion to reflection rather than riot. You walk past a small corner shop where the smell of gin still lingers, though it's mixed with bread and roasting coffee. A sign reads, "Premium London Gin, now with heritage." You peer inside and see bottles lined meticulously, their labels boasting centuries of craftsmanship. You realize that gin has become an artifact of continuity, something that connects generations, a liquid link to the city's past madness and resilience. The pubs now are subdued, almost reverent in their quiet elegance. Patrons sip quietly, some reading newspapers, some engaged in low conversation. You overhear a man explaining to his friend how gin helped soldiers endure distant campaigns, how it sweetened the bitterest days of service. The friend nods, adding that the juniper bite is still the same, no matter the century. Historians still argue whether the gin craze shaped London's moral compass or simply revealed it. You notice in every pub, museum, and household a tension between indulgence and moderation, survival and civility. Gin is no longer a moral villain, it's a cultural constant, a thread of continuity that outlasts fads, wars, and reformers. You wander down to a small riverside cafe, where a young woman sits with a neat measure of gin, reflecting in the fading light. She sketches the skyline, her pencil capturing chimneys, bridges, and the Thames. You watch as the light dances on her page, and for a moment, you understand that gin has always inspired art, not just by loosening inhibitions, but by documenting resilience, joy, and sorrow alike. The city itself seems aware of its long relationship with the spirit. You pass a plaque commemorating Hogarth, whose gin lane once shocked the world. Nearby, a new exhibition celebrates the refined elegance of gin palaces, showing photographs of chandeliers, polished brass bars, and patrons in their Sunday best. The exhibition reads like a love letter to a complicated, enduring relationship. You pause to consider the paradox. Gin was demonized, loved, feared, regulated, celebrated, and refined. It has survived cycles of moral panic, industrialization, empire, and war. And yet, in each era, it has remained essentially the same. Juniper, water, alcohol, simple, constant, human. Outside, the streets glimmer in the soft evening light. The fog is thinner now, tinged with the distant aroma of baking bread, coal smoke, and, faintly, juniper. You notice couples strolling, friends laughing, elderly men and women sipping quietly in cafes. Gin has become a silent witness to all these lives, binding them together in a shared history of human experience. A pub door opens, spilling laughter and music into the street. You see young bartenders mastering the art of cocktails, experimenting with bitters, citrus, and herbs. Gin is no longer merely a remedy or vice, it's a canvas, a medium for creativity. The old chaos is gone, replaced with ritual, precision, and quiet joy. As you follow the reflections of street lamps along wet cobblestones, you can't help but think that gin has taught the city, and its people, something fundamental. Life is often harsh, unpredictable, and unfair. But with a bit of warmth, a measured sip, and shared company, humanity endures. You raise your glass to the city, to history, and to the simple, eternal comfort of juniper spirit. The fog settles like a soft blanket over London. Somewhere, a clock tower chimes. Somewhere else, a musician plays a quiet tune. And you, walking home through centuries of human experience distilled into a single golden liquid, understand the strange, enduring magic of gin. You wake to a London reshaped again, this time by the hum of neon lights, the hiss of underground trains, and the bustling streets of the post-war modern city. Gin has survived it all, now woven into cocktail culture, trendy bars, and quiet domestic evenings. The once feared poison is a symbol of sophistication, nostalgia, and occasional rebellion. You step into a small speakeasy-style bar tucked between brick facades. The smell of juniper mixes with citrus and a faint trace of tobacco. A sign above the bar reads, "Gin, the spirit of London since 1736." You smile. The claim is bold, but historically defensible. Behind the counter, a bartender expertly twists a lemon peel into a martini, the curl falling gracefully into the glass. Each movement is careful, deliberate, a ritual that feels centuries old. Patrons chat quietly, immersed in their own stories, their laughter measured. You notice a young couple sharing a drink while comparing notes on vintage gin labels. "See this bottle?" the man says, pointing to a dusty Hendrix. "It's practically a relic." They clink glasses, and for a moment, history itself seems to float in amber liquid between them. Historians still argue whether the Georgian gin craze was a tragedy, a symptom of poverty, or a catalyst for modern regulation. Standing here, you sense that it was all three, and that its endurance stems from the very human combination of necessity, pleasure, and ritual. Every sip carries echoes of slum alleyways, gin palaces, industrial streets, and elegant parlors. A group of friends debates the merits of classic versus modern cocktails. One insists that the martini is the pinnacle, another swears by the gin and tonic, a colonial inheritance. You overhear a bartender mutter to a colleague, "Funny how the same spirit that nearly destroyed London now fuels its chicest bars." It makes you chuckle quietly. The cycle of ruin and reinvention never really ends. Outside, the city pulses with energy. Cars honk, buses rumble past, and neon signs flash advertisements for everything from theater shows to fashion boutiques. Yet the scent of gin lingers faintly on the wind, a subtle reminder of London's long-standing love affair with the juniper berry. Even in the modern age, gin maintains its presence, both comforting and intoxicating, in the hearts and routines of the people. You pass a small museum exhibition featuring artwork inspired by the Gin Craze, prints, paintings, and even a tiny reconstructed alley with a barrel still bubbling quietly. Visitors take photographs, laugh at the exaggerated depictions of drunken chaos, and read about the social upheaval it caused. And yet, nobody seems horrified, more curious, reflective, and oddly amused. Gin has been tamed in memory, if not entirely in spirit. You find yourself wandering past an old pub, its exterior unchanged from decades prior. Inside, patrons raise glasses filled with classic London gin and tonic. The bartender pours carefully, telling you stories of gin's history between customers. Every pour, every clink of glass, feels like a quiet homage to centuries of adaptation, survival, and pleasure. A jazz trio begins to play in the corner, and the music blends seamlessly with laughter and conversation. You notice the subtle nods to the past, bartender uniforms reminiscent of early 20th century styles, classic barware, even posters referencing Hogarth's famous Gin Lane. It's a gentle acknowledgement that gin's story is deeply entwined with the city's narrative. From scandal to sophistication, you take a slow sip of your own glass, feeling the warmth spread. It is smooth, refined, and comforting, a distilled memory of all that came before. The alleys of chaos, the palaces of light, the quiet backrooms, and the war-scarred streets, all condensed into a liquid experience. Gin has endured not by force, but by flowing, bending, and adapting to human needs. As the night deepens, London hums around you. Footsteps echo, conversations fade, and the clink of glass punctuates the evening. You realize that gin, like the city itself, is both a witness and participant in history, silent, potent, and remarkably patient. You wake to a London that has grown global, cosmopolitan, and unapologetically busy. Skyscrapers pierce the sky, and the Thames glimmers with reflections of neon signs, office towers, and bridges stretching like steel arms across the water. Gin, ever adaptable, now sits comfortably on menus from polished cocktail lounges to corner cafes, a reminder that some traditions, however scandalous, endure. You wander into a modern bar where the lighting is soft and ambient, electronic music hums in the background, and the scent of citrus mingles with juniper. The bartender, a young woman with tattooed forearms, prepares a gin-based cocktail with precision. She shakes, strains, and garnishes it with a twist of lime. The city changes, she says, but gin's the constant. You nod, feeling the centuries of history distilled into her single motion. Patrons sip quietly, engaged in hushed conversations. A group of young professionals discusses work, relationships, and travel. One mentions a history tour of Georgian London. Gin was illegal back then, right? A friend asks. The others laugh. Illegal, yes. Disastrous, also yes. But look at it now, someone replies, raising a glass. It's art. You smile at that observation. Gin has gone from demon to muse, from threat to cultural icon. Historians still argue whether the gin craze of the 18th century catalyzed social reform or merely highlighted systemic inequities. Standing here, you sense that it was both. Gin was a symptom of economic hardship, social pressure, and urbanization, but it also sparked debate, legislation, art, and culture. Without it, London would be a very different city. You step outside for a breath of night air. The streets are alive with life, cyclists weave through traffic, couples stroll along the river, and distant laughter echoes from a late-night cafe. Somewhere, a street musician plays a haunting tune, notes floating over the water. The scent of juniper is faint but persistent, carried on the wind as if the spirit itself refuses to be forgotten. You pass an old pub, its facade illuminated by modern signage. Inside, people still raise glasses in quiet toasts, a ritual unchanged despite decades of modernization. On the wall hangs a small framed print of Hogarth's Gin Lane, a historical nod that elicits chuckles from visitors who barely grasp its original horror. Gin, once the instrument of moral panic, has become a badge of cultural literacy, a wink to history. In a quiet corner, a scholar takes notes on the resurgence of gin in cocktail culture. She debates quietly with a colleague over how modern branding has sanitized the narrative, removing much of the chaos and desperation but preserving the allure. You realize that gin's story is a mirror. The city projects its values onto it, and in return, it reflects them, amber and potent. You find a small park bench overlooking the river and sit. The city hums around you, alive and timeless. Somewhere nearby, a group of friends clinks glasses. You watch the motion, thinking of every era you've passed through, the slums, the palaces, the refined lounges, and marvel at the resilience of both people and spirit. Gin, like London, has endured because it adapts, because it listens, and because it comforts. As the night deepens, you sip your gin slowly, letting the warmth and history settle in your chest. The streets shimmer under lamplight, and the river flows quietly beneath the bridges. Somewhere, in this vast, bustling city, the echo of a child playing in a puddle of spilled gin centuries ago merges with the laughter of today's drinkers. Time collapses in a single, golden moment. You stand, feeling the pulse of the city, the rhythm of human life, and the subtle, enduring presence of juniper spirit. London continues to change, as it always has, but the lessons of the gin craze remain: resilience, adaptation, and the small, comforting rituals that carry people through even the toughest nights. You wake to a London that is both familiar and unrecognizable, a city built on centuries of change yet grounded in enduring rituals. Gin has become more than a drink, it is a lens through which you can trace the city's evolution, from chaos and desperation to sophistication and nostalgia. The streets hum with life, neon reflections shimmer on wet cobbles. And the distant murmur of the Thames whispers continuity. You stroll past a modern distillery, sleek and glass-fronted, where visitors tour production lines and sample botanicals. The scent of juniper and citrus fills the air. A guide explains that each bottle contains centuries of tradition, distilled knowledge, and a touch of human folly. You taste a sample, crisp and fragrant, and realize that history itself can be experienced in flavor. Historians still debate whether gin's endurance is remarkable resilience or simply human stubbornness. Standing here, you sense it is both. Gin has survived regulation, prohibition attempts, moral panic, wars, and social transformation. Each era reinterprets it, yet it remains fundamentally the same, a juniper-spiced companion to human experience. You find yourself in a small, dimly lit bar where the clientele is eclectic: artists, students, retirees, tourists. Glasses clink softly. A young couple raises a toast to adventure, a middle-aged man sips quietly, reflecting, and an elderly woman smiles knowingly at the bartender. Across the room, a display celebrates the gin palaces of the 19th century, juxtaposed with images of modern mixology. Gin is simultaneously heritage and innovation. You think back to the slums of Hogarth's London, to the chaos of the alleyway stills, to the grandeur of gaslit palaces, to the resilience of post-war drinkers. Every sip you've had, every glass you've observed, connects you to those lives, those moments, those choices. Gin has borne witness to human endurance, folly, and celebration alike. You sink onto a bench by the river, letting the cool night air brush your face. The city stretches endlessly before you, alive with light, movement, and the gentle murmur of life. The clink of distant glasses, the soft laughter of friends walking home, the faint hum of traffic. All mingle into a lullaby that carries both the weight of history and the comfort of now. The streets, once chaotic and dangerous, now pulse with quiet routine. You think of the slums of the 18th century, of alleyway stills and desperate drinkers, and how far the city has come. You remember the glittering gin palaces, the polished bars of the 19th century, the cozy post-war pubs, and the sophisticated cocktail lounges of today. Each era left its mark, each glass tells a story, and yet the spirit remains constant. You close your eyes for a moment and feel the centuries of human experience distilled into the warmth in your chest. Each sip of gin, each clink of glass, each shared drink across time has been a small act of connection, endurance, and celebration. You let your mind drift through the smells, sounds, and images, the laughter, the panic, the quiet reflections, the raucous joy. The city exhales softly around you. Fog rolls gently over the cobblestones, the lights of the bridges shimmer in the water, and somewhere, a musician plays a low tune that carries on the wind. There is a rhythm here, a continuity that stretches beyond wars, reforms, and social upheaval. Gin, in all its forms, has flowed alongside the city. Witnessing everything, adapting, comforting, and enduring, as your eyelids grow heavy, you realize that history is not just recorded in books or monuments, it is lived, sipped, felt. It is present in the warmth of a drink shared among friends, in the quiet reflection of a solitary evening, in the laughter of children echoing across the centuries. The city, the people, the spirit, they are all threads in the same golden tapestry, and so you let yourself drift, the sounds of London blending with your own heartbeat, the scent of juniper fading gently into the night, carrying you slowly into rest. There is comfort in continuity, peace in endurance, and warmth in the shared experience of humanity. Tonight, you are part of that story, wrapped in the quiet magic of a city that never stops moving, and a spirit that never stops flowing.